The Museum Roadshow is brought to you by 125 Apparel.
Hello, I'm Mary Bergen. Thank you so much for coming to visit me here at the Holy Rosary Catholic Cemetery on the west side of Detroit Lakes. I lived a wonderful life, 99 years. Didn't quite make it to 100, but 99 is awfully good, don't you think? I was born in 1883. I was born in October, so October is a special month for me. I just love it. But you know, Napoleon was an important part of my life. Can you believe it? Napoleon, the dictator in France? Well, you might wonder why. It ends up that my grandfather wanted freedom so bad he couldn't stand Napoleon, so he moved to Quebec. He immigrated to Quebec, where people spoke French, so he felt at home. But then he heard about the homesteading, and he wanted to move to the USA, to America, to homestead, where you got 160 acres if you proved it up. So he moved to Belle Prairie, Minnesota, and that's where my dad and my mother were farming eventually in Belle Prairie. You know, I want to tell you about the farming back then because it was so much work, and my brothers weren't much help. You know, I had brothers and sisters, but my brothers, you know, usually they'd be good on the farm, but not those guys. One of them had ruined his foot because he had fallen through a deck. You know, back then we didn't have sidewalks, we had decks. Fell through the wood. So instead, I became my dad's right-hand man, right-hand daughter, whatever you want to call it. And oh, I just loved it, riding with him on the horse-drawn plow. We did so much farm work that way. That was great. It was a lot of work though. And when he finally had me do it by myself, I was really nervous. But you know, all those things are character building. And then as time went on, my dad, when I think back on it, he was an entrepreneur. We didn't use that word entrepreneur back then, but he was an entrepreneur. He had a grocery store. He had the Houghton grocery store. They sold feed and that sort of thing, and grain, and as well as groceries. And then he also had a hotel. He built a hotel in Little Falls, Minnesota. He only had it for 5 years, and I suspect it was because he was so kind-hearted. People were depressed, you know, they had lost their jobs in the sawmill. It was a hard time, and they needed a place to stay, and Dad would let them stay there for free. So we got rid of the hotel after 5 years because he got a big-time job. Well, we thought it was big time. Running a farm, a large farm in Waban, Minnesota, way up north. So that's why my family moved up to this area. He was running that farm. My sister, Emma, we didn't get along very well. We'd fight, but you know, we must have loved one another because we spent so much time together. We checked out Waban and we decided, no, no offense if you're from Waban, but we did not want to live in Waban. So we went back to Little Falls and we got jobs cleaning, and then Emma was really good at making dresses. Back then, you didn't have store-bought dresses, you had dresses made by somebody. So Emma, you know, was pretty popular that way. And I cleaned and cooked. I worked at many places in Little Falls. I worked in a hotel, I worked at a bar. That, you know, that wasn't as good. But I worked in the jail, cleaning and cooking. But eventually, you know, we got lonesome for our folks and we thought we better join the family in Waban. But that was a good move, I'll tell you. Waban was an important part of my life because we got jobs at this hotel in Waban when the railroad was coming through. They were building the Sioux line, and so all these men were there working on the Sioux line, and I was cleaning and cooking, and the guys would pay 30 cents for each meal, which, you know, back then it was probably kind of a chunk of money, but 30 cents for a meal in this great big tent, because the hotel wasn't big enough for 60 guys to fit in and have their meal. And there I laid eyes on Joe Bergen. He laid eyes on me, and our love story started. right there in Waban, Minnesota, where I didn't want to go originally. How about that? So as time went on, Emma and I were getting board and room and $2.50 a week for all that work, cleaning up after all those rail guys. I mean, that was kind of a messy deal, having to clean up after those guys. But then I got a major boost in pay. I got a job at the Indian school in Bena. Bena's way up north, up by Grand Rapids, Minnesota. $100 a month plus board and room. So even though I had met Joe, I took off for Bena and was working hard up there, but we would communicate by letters. By that time, he had gone back to Detroit Lakes. He wanted to be a farmer so bad. And so he went back to Detroit Lakes, and, I had a feeling he was going to propose after all those letters because he bought land. He bought quite a few lots in Detroit Lakes, and he bought a house. So I thought, whoa, a single guy buying a house. Sure enough, he proposed, and we were married at the Bena Indian School. I made the cake and the punch, and Emma made my wedding dress. And we had a dance, and then we took off on the train for Detroit Lakes to set up housekeeping. When we first got here, we had a number of houses. As our family grew, we had to have bigger houses. So we had quite a few houses, and then we had started with the greenhouses. Now, my granddaughter showed up here at the cemetery one day, and she was so excited because she wanted everybody to know that she was Mary Bergen, named after me, and she was so proud of me. She said, I want you to know, everybody, that my grandmother was the one who really started the business. Her grandfather was busy, my husband was busy farming, and he milks the cows and sold the milk for 5 cents a quart. But yeah, Mary was right. She's such a lovely granddaughter. I'm so glad I gave her my name. Yeah, sticking up for me like that. And I did start the business. And time went on. We had 10 children. That's why we moved so much, because we had more and more children. We finally built a house right by the greenhouses. So that worked out well. And I worked so hard. I'm dressed up today because I knew you were coming, and it's not every day that a camera comes to the Holy Rosary Cemetery, because usually I'd be wearing my cotton dress and working really hard at the greenhouse. But I'm so proud of my family. My boys grew the business, and now we are selling flowers and shrubs and trees in many, many states. We have thousands of people that are so happy that they have Bergen flowers and trees. And I'm so proud of my family that they stuck with it. 4th generation now running the business, and the 5th generation is in college learning horticulture. You know what that means? Means gardening, just like I did. So it might end up being 5 generations. I've got my fingers crossed. I'm so happy that you joined me here at the cemetery today. It's kind of chilly, but like I said, October's a good month for me because that was my birth month. So if you ever want to know more about me or anybody else, you can go to the Becker County Museum and ask the ladies in the archives and the reference area for more information, and they'll be happy to help you out. I'm Mary Bergen, wife of Joe, but remember, I'm the one who really started the business. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Museum Roadshow, brought to you by 125 Apparel.